Our lives begin, middle and end on this green
Space, your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle giants dancing round. All through the night, safe till the morning light. Sailing through space, your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Sailing through space, your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle giants dancing round. All through the night, safe till the morning light. This pretty planet spinning through space, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle giants dancing round. All through the night, safe till the morning light. All through the night, safe till the morning light. Time flies, ages go by, empires rise and fall. All history led you to me on this green planet, space, your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle giants dancing round. All through the night, safe till the morning light. Space, your garden, your harbor, your holy place. This pretty planet spinning through space, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle giants dancing round. Golden sun space, sailing your holy place. Golden sun space, sailing your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle giants dancing round. All through the night, safe till the morning light. All through the night, safe till the morning light. This pretty
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. Firstly, please silence your phones if you've not done so already. You can't hear me? Now is it okay? Okay. All right, did you hear me about silencing your phones? Okay, please silence your phones. Okay, whoops. Okay, my name is Donna Lawrence. Together with Barb Myers, I'm co-chair of Team Green. The other Team Green members are Cheryl Eathlin, all dressed up in her outfit today, Margaret Henderson, I'm not sure if she's in the room, and Gary Mummer. I guess that I'd be considered an old-timer, having been a member since 1979, almost 43 years. As this congregation has transitioned from a lay-led to a ministerially led congregation and has moved from the small barn in West Reading to this larger home in Danbury, it has retained its warm and welcoming community with its mission to create a just society and a sustainable earth. Over the years, I have volunteered in numerous ways, and at present am a member of Team Green, the Caring Circle, the choir, and the knitting ministry. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury has been gathering together for 200 years. And as we work to build a more just world, we respectfully acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional land of the Paugussett people. I'm so glad that you're able to join us this morning because you are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or 1000th Sunday in our midst, in person or online, we are stronger because you are with us. If you're new to our community and joining us online, we invite you to introduce yourself and where you're coming from in the chat box as you are comfortable. At the conclusion of today's service, you will have the chance to participate. Actually, this is not true. I'm supposed to mark that out. There will not be any breakout rooms today because we're having a talk back with our speaker, Mitch. And this is something that some of us from the barn would fondly remember. We used to have a lot of talkbacks, but ministers did not like talkbacks because it kind of disturbed the whole, sense of the service. But anyway, we thought it would be interesting to have a talkback with Mitch. So that will be at the end of our service, and we will not have breakout rooms, but people online will be able to participate by posting their questions in the chat room. And Nancy Hirscharter will explain this more later. Okay, if you are new and here in person, please fill out a visitor card at the table near the exit before you leave today. It's out in the foyer. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. And I'm going to, okay, today we welcome Dr. Stephen Wagner as our guest speaker. Dr. Wagner has been teaching ecology, climate ecology, and related courses at Western Connecticut State University in Danbury since 1996. In 2019, he received the Aquarian Environmental Champion Award, Individual Communication category. That same year, Dr. Wagner received an official citation from the Connecticut General Assembly for his study of the effect of historical events, such as the Industrial Revolution, on the environment. Okay, I already explained to you about the talkback rooms. I would call your attention to the announcements and the order of service. The only change to note is that the Together Women Rise meeting tonight is at 6, not at 5. Okay, and Margaret would like to make an announcement. Where is she? Oh, there she is. Okay.
Did everybody get that? The Together Women Rise is at 6 o'clock, not 5 o'clock like your program says. That's a typo. So welcome, whether you are here in person or online. We'd like to invite everyone who's here to join in the Care and Share Fair on your way out. And if you're viewing the service online, there is a list in the program of the teams and committees that need a lot of help, frankly. And you can reach out to me or to Sherry in the office or anyone. We can put you in touch with the teams. We have food and drink outside. or you can get some coffee first. You'll want to pick up one of these sheets. These are your passport. They may be in your program, but we also have extras. And there can be one per person. You'll need to put your name on it, and these are for the prize drawing. We have 2 prizes, gift cards, and put your name on it. And if you're at a table, maybe encourage people to remember to put their name on it, because you're going to take this to each table and get it stamped, otherwise known as initialed, to be eligible for the prize drawing. Of course, no sign up or purchase is necessary. Just say hi. Oh, and then you'll put it in the magic wishing bowl. And our MC, Peter Horton, will draw 2 names and announce the winners here today. And we hope that you'll consider volunteering, even if it's minimal. We promise not to overcommit you. And I really want to encourage people to say no when you need to say no. We're not here to compel people to do things. But on the other hand, we have some teams that are seriously short of people. We're struggling to meet our obligations. And the only teams that are here today or listed in your program are the ones that really need people. So please think about what you can do either over the summer or in the fall. And you'll probably be hearing more about this because this is an ongoing need. Thank you for helping with that. And I hope you have fun both here today at the Care and Share Fair and also in your work with teams on small groups. It really is a fun thing to do. Thank you. We can do this together.
Okay, again, welcome to the UU Congregation of Danbury. Please join in singing our hymn of welcome for the beauty of the earth, number 21.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of here and I, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
What if when we light the chalice, you hear an invitation to welcome gratitude for the earth?
As we got ready to light the chalice today, we talked about blessings from this planet. Here's our list of blessings.
I am grateful for birdsong in the mornings, the changing of seasons, and the smell of rain.
and I am grateful for sunsets and warm weather.
With the flame of hope shedding light in your heart, we invite you to bring to mind your own list of blessings from the earth.
We light the chalice in gratitude.
Test, test. You'd think I would know how to turn a microphone. Please join Anya and Zach and me in the words of our chalice lighting affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life.
Let's say together the words of our children's affirmation, because it is good to be together. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. Before the story, I have a special announcement to share about religious education and about Sunday services. For those of you who will be in the fellowship hall this coming week, when you arrive, you'll notice that the area on this side of the room will have some additions. There will be some shelves with religious education items in the room. That's because for the next 2 months, for May and June, we'll do an experiment of integrating religious education for children through 8th grade into Sunday services. And then we'll have supervision and time to play after services outside during coffee hour. I know, this sounds wild, but I assure you that there are congregations that have been doing this and loving this around the country. And it is only an experiment, so we only need to try it for a couple of months, and then we can put our heads together and see what we have learned from our experiment. Please keep your eye out for the announcement in the This Week Thursday email. There will be a link to lots of information about the experiment and answers to many of the questions you may have. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. It's time for our story. This book is called Wangari's Trees of Peace. It's by Jeanette Winter. Wangari lives under an umbrella of green trees in the shadow of Mount Kenya in Africa. Are we missing the next page? I'm sure that it's coming. She watches the birds in the forest where she and her mother go to gather firewood for cooking. And she helps harvest the sweet potatoes, sugarcane, and maize from the rich soil. Wangari shines in school, and when she grows tall like the trees in the forest, she wins a scholarship to study in America. 6 years later, her studies over, Wangari returns to her Kenya home and sees a change. What has happened? She wonders. Where are the trees? Wangari sees women bent from hauling firewood miles and miles from home. She sees the barren land where no crops grow. And where are the birds? Thousands of trees have been cut down to make room for buildings, but no one planted new trees to take their place. Will all of Kenya become a desert, she wonders, as her tears fall. Wangari thinks about the barren land. I can begin to replace some of the lost trees here in my own backyard, one tree at a time. She starts by planting 9 seedlings. Watching the seedlings take root gives Wangari the idea to plant more, to start a farm of baby trees, a nursery. In an open space, she plants row after row of tiny trees. Next, Wangari convinces the village women that planting trees is a good thing. She gives each one a seedling. Our lives will be better when we have trees again. You'll see. We are planting the seeds of hope. The women spread out over their village, planting tiny trees in long rows like a green belt stretching over the land. The government men laugh. Women can't do this, they say. It takes trained foresters to plant trees. The women ignore the laughter and keep planting. Wangari pays them a small amount for each seedling still living after 3 months, their first earnings ever. Word travels like wind through trees about the green returning to Wangari's village. Soon, other women in other villages and towns and cities are planting long rows of seedlings too. But the cutting continues. Wangari stands tall as an oak to protect the old trees still remaining. We need a park more than we need an office tower. The government men disagree. Wangari blocks their way, so they hit her with clubs. They call her a troublemaker and put her in jail. And still she stands tall. Right is right, even if you're alone. But Wangari is not alone. Talk of the trees spreads over all of Africa like ripples in Lake Victoria. More women hear the talk and plant ever more seedlings in longer and longer rows. The seedlings take root and grow tall until there are over 30 million trees where there were none. The umbrella of Kenya returns. Women walk tall, their backs straight, for now they can gather firewood closer to home. The land is no longer barren. Sweet potatoes, sugarcane, and maize grow again in the rich red earth. The whole world hears of Wangari's trees and of her army of women who planted them. And if you were to climb to the very top of Mount Kenya today, you would see millions of trees growing below you and the green Wangari brought back to Africa. So ends the story. And let's sing together This Little Light of Mine, and I will take downstairs any kids who would like to come and do some activities down there.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
It's now time for our shared milestones. If you have a milestone,
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the head, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
It is now time for our congregational offering. If you're with us for the first time, your presence here, virtual or actual, is your gift to us. Members gathered here in Fellowship Hall, please express your generosity as our greeters circulate the donation baskets. Those online, well, it says you may click on a link posted in the chat. I don't know if that's working, but you can do that. You can also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Claphard Ridge Road in Danbury, 06811. As we create this holy place together, thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love. Please join in the words of our congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
Gary,
Yes.
how can we present a positive Earth Day message to the congregation when the climate change evidence all around us is so discouraging? I'm disheartened. California is burning up.
Yes, and sea level is rising enough to drive occupants from their Pacific homes.
Yes, and the coastlines may disappear.
Tornadoes, hurricanes are stronger and more damaging.
The
I
climate,
lived through one. Sorry.
the climate around crops is changing so much that historic harvests, like wine grapes, can no longer be farmed in their usual geographic locations. And I learned yesterday that the bison on the plains are getting smaller with each generation.
We're learning more about ice shelves breaking away, glaciers thawing, and the melting permafrost. Oh, and yes, the poor people of the world, they're already suffering because of our carbon and methane addictions. And it doesn't seem that the institutions and governments who should be responsible for developing initiatives can or will act. I'm really discouraged.
So what can we provide to our congregants on Earth Day that won't be totally depressing?
We set you up, Mitch. I know Mitch. He's been here before in this building to speak. He teaches 4 courses on climate change. You saw his resume brief. I'm hoping we'll learn the facts, explore what needs to be done, and what we can do, as the story said this morning.
Professor Wagner, the lectern is yours.
Pardon my little bit of seasonal allergies this morning. I have a cup of water here I might have to sip on. First slide, do we have, oh, there we go. I'm sorry that the folks at home can't see the slides. I'll try my best to describe them as best I can. When I'm talking to my students at Western, if I'm talking to groups of young people, I often have to explain what Apollo 8 was. Looking at this group, I'm guessing most of you probably don't require that explanation. But in preparation for Neil Armstrong and company's trip to the moon in 1969, where they would actually set foot and did, we had a test run, Apollo 8, which is around Christmas time, as I remember, 1968. I was 9 years old watching it at my grandmother's house. And one of the great benefits we got from that was photos. One of the astronauts had cameras. He had a black and white camera. He had color cameras. He was taking a picture of the moon. They did not intend, NASA did not intend to have them take pictures back at Earth, but when the astronauts looked back, they could not take pictures of it. And there were a collection of iconic pictures that made it onto all sorts of posters in college dorm rooms back in the 60s and 70s. And this is one of them. There'll be another one at the end. Slide, please. Can you see it? Oh, all right. So anyway, that's good. Now, let me show you some data. This is a graph where each of the red dots indicates the average global temperature anomaly. What it is a comparison of that particular year to a common average that is calculated. In this case, 1850 to 1900 is the average that's used as the baseline. The upshot of it is that we have been able to collect data on Earth's temperature for quite some time. The farther back we look in time, the more we have to use proxies, things that we can measure that tell us about what we can't measure, old sailing ship logs and all sorts of stuff. But now, of course, we have satellites, and so we have all that data, and we're very confident that what we are seeing and calculating is real. The upshot of it is that after a kind of a flat time, right around the years after World War II, the temperature has been climbing, and it is not 1 year after the other. It's actually up a little bit, down a little bit, for reasons that make sense to climatologists. Slide, please. This graph is another one of those comparisons that shows us that, to cut to the chase, the 7 most recent years are the 7 warmest years in history. Well, in history, since humans have been able to make these calculations. Way back before humans, back in the age of dinosaurs, and before that, there were years which were much warmer than there are now. But we, A, had nothing to do with it, and B, weren't around to experience it. So, slide, please. Now, climate change is more than just temperature. It is all sorts of things. It's, the relative humidity at sea level going up. It's ice melting everywhere. It is biological things such as organisms arriving at their destination if they're migratory before they used to, and trees and animals creeping up mountains and so on. Each one of these things indicates the same. They all indicate a warming world. None of them are used to calculate any of the others. They are independent variables, the scientists call them. This gives us a great lot of confidence that when we say the climate's warming, honestly, all you really need to do is look at the ice. If the world were not warming, the ice would not be melting year after year after year. That's the thermometer. Slide, please. Now, the heat that is trapped by greenhouse gases is almost entirely ending up in the oceans. And this is very significant for reasons which I'll point out. 93%. Now, for those of you who remember high school chemistry and college chemistry that you might have taken way back when, or not so way back when, you know that water holds more heat than air does. It changes temperature more slowly and so on. And that's why all the heat, or 93% of it's ending up in the oceans. Slide, please. Now, why should we care about that? Well, we care about it because, for one, there are two ways in which sea level can rise. One of them is for you to warm the water, makes all the molecules farther apart. And the other is that the warmer water melts ice that's floating on it. Now, why should we care about that? Well, when you melt ice and replace it with something else, mostly it would be open water, you are going from a reflective surface to a absorbing surface. So here's how it works. Warmer water causes ice to melt. Ice to melt means that less of the light from the sun is reflecting and more of it is being absorbed. The more that is absorbed, the more the water melts or warms, and more the ice melts. It's what scientists call a positive feedback system, or what my grandmother used to call a vicious cycle. Okay. Slide, please. And as an example illustration of that, the North Pole, which is the geographical North Pole is over water. It's not over land like the South Pole is. And that blue dot there in the center is the North Pole. And most of the ice then that is there and surrounding it is floating, unless it's close enough to land that it's kind of grounded. And what happens is the warmer the water, the less ice forms every winter and the more ice melts in the summer. And so you have a environment which is gradually getting more and more ice free. In fact, by the time my grandson, who's 4 now, grows up, you'll be able to take a boat all the way to the North Pole in summer, which you might think, wow, there's a tourist destination. But that means that when that sun is above the horizon 24 hours a day in the summer, it is warming up that water in a much greater amount. Okay, slide, please. The other big ice cube, other than Greenland, which is the last piece of the last ice age, is Antarctica. I lived and went to grad school in Alaska and lived there for 13 years. So I'm familiar with the Arctic. I have never been to the Antarctic, and I would love to go while there's still Antarctic there. But the upshot of this is this big mass of ice, which is mostly perched up on a continent, is cold, high elevation, and it is melting around the edges. In fact, those areas that are blue are areas where you have a little net gain, but the scale is 0 to 1 meter, I think, in ice per year. Whereas those areas in red are losing mass, and the scale is 0 to 6 meters of ice loss a year. So there are areas, particularly around the western part of Antarctica, that have names. You're going to hear them if you have not already. One of them is called the Thwaites Glacier. It is there on the west side of Antarctica. I realize west and east are arbitrary if you're talking about the South Pole, but you know, it's called the west, is on the left side of the picture, and right above it is the Pine Island Glacier, and those two glaciers show signs of breaking up, and if they do, it'll speed up the ice behind them. Positive feedback system, non-linear changes. That's the world we live in. Slide, please. Now, why should we care about that? Because this is not just a scientific issue, it's a human issue. There are people around the world that live within inches of sea level. There are people around the world that are not able to get up and go and buy new property somewhere at higher elevation. There are the people who are the least responsible for causing climate change are the ones who will suffer first. That is an issue of environmental justice. Okay. This is a picture of the village in the Sundarbans in southern Bangladesh. This part of Bangladesh is made up of a river delta formed by the Ganges and Brahmaputra and another river I can't remember that formed this vast river delta, and there are 16 million people living within a meter of sea level. These are not wealthy people. These are poor folk. These are poor brown people. Okay. And they are living there because that's where they can live. Slide, please. Other parts of the world are in danger. People are in danger, not because it's too wet, but because it's too dry. There are areas of sub-Saharan Africa called the Sahel, where people tried to farm during a brief time of plentiful rain, but that didn't last long, and suddenly they are without ability to feed themselves and their children. Imagine not being able to feed your kids. I just cannot imagine that myself. And what would you do if you couldn't feed your kids? All right, slide, please. So, the future of humanity. Truth. This is the truth. The future of humanity includes hundreds of millions of climate refugees. Slide, please. But that's not a new thing. In the 30s, in the Dust Bowl, my grandfather's brother, honest to God, this is their names, Cecil and Thurbert. Cecil and Thurbert moved out to California. And a lot of people who moved from Oklahoma to California were not well treated when they got to California. Americans keeping out other Americans because we've got to take care of our own. You've heard the stories. You probably read The Grapes of Wrath and maybe other books about it in school. But this is something that happened here. This is something that will happen in a lot of places and is happening right now. Slide, please. What do you do if you can't make a living and you can't feed your kids? Well, you migrate. Woody Guthrie sang a song, wrote a song about that. How can you keep on moving unless you migrate too? It's a good song. I think it was Woody Guthrie. Anyway, it came from that era. Slide, please. Well, I'm going to step away from the microphone so I can read that. I can't remember in my head. How can you frighten a man whose hunger is not only in his own cramped stomach, but in the wretched bellies of his children? You can't scare him. He has known fear beyond every other. Chapter 19, Grapes of Wrath. And I'm back. Slide, please. So, climate change to me is a moral issue, and there are moral imperatives involved. And one of them is this: the people who are least responsible for causing climate change are those most vulnerable to it. Slide, please. So, what can you do? There are things which individuals can do. There are things that individuals cannot do because they are too big a problem for individuals, but require collective action. Okay? What you can do is you can vote your values. Figure out what your values are and vote. Find people who agree with you who are running for office. I have the great benefit of occasionally being able to brief some of the elected officials or candidates there for them. I spoke to a young man who's running for state senator on Thursday, I guess it was, and gave him an hour briefing. I think I blew his mind, but gave him useful information. And if he was elected, and I hope he is, he'll have the opportunity to use some of the information I gave him. Speak up with your voice, your time, your money. Be active in state and local affairs. Reduce your carbon footprint. Eat less meat. That one relates to the one above. Okay. I'm not saying eat none. I'm just saying eat less. And if you can eat none, all the better. You'll probably be healthier for it as well. Slide, please. What we can do collectively, in fact, things we must do collectively, because individuals are not effective at some tasks, is educate our children about climate change. Cap all the zombie oil wells. Oil drillers, some of the less reputable ones, will drill a hole, a well for oil. They'll pump it dry and then they'll leave it. They're supposed to legally cap it off, but what happens is the natural gas that's associated with the oil just continues to spew. And methane, which is the main component of natural gas, is 17 times, I think, stronger molecule for molecule as a greenhouse gas than CO2 is, depending on the time frame you're looking at. So we need to get our government to require those zombie oil wells be capped, and a lot of other things. We need to shift. We need to eliminate subsidies to fossil fuel companies. There's no reason in the world why companies that make so much money should be paid by governments around the country to do that as well. We need to shift towards renewable energy and regenerative agriculture, that preserves the soil better. We need to shift from the refrigerants like hydrofluorocarbons, Freon, and to other refrigerants that are not hideously strong greenhouse gases or flammable. The HFCs, the fluorocarbon gases, are the devil's own greenhouse gas. They're 17,000 times, roughly molecule for molecule, the strength of absorbing heat is CO2. And remember when you bought a can of deodorant or something and the propellant in the can was Freon? Not to mention hairspray. That's a story for a different time. My mother. I'm thinking my mother. Okay. Here's something that's not obviously a climate issue, but it is. Because it has to do with the controlling human population. Because we need to have we need to have a smaller human population in the future. And that is make education available to all girls and family planning available to all women around the world. I am the father of daughters. And so this one hits home. My wife is African. Okay. So this hits home. And imagine the benefit, all the range of benefits for the world if girls had the same opportunity around the world that boys have. How many Einsteins? How many Mozarts did the world lose out on? Because Miss Einstein or Miss Mozart were not able to gain the education to let their spirit soar. Slide, please. Now, Albert Camus, who was a French novelist and philosopher, who wrote a novel called The Plague, which is quite timely to this day and age. The main character played a doctor who was involved in trying to fight the plague in Algeria, and he was trying to figure out how to do this. And the character in the novel says, I have to tell you this whole thing is not about heroism. It's about decency. It may seem a ridiculous idea, but the only way to fight the plague is with decency. And I would argue that the way to effectively fight climate change is with human decency. Slide, please. I think I'm almost done. Moral imperative 2. We are now seeing the effects of climate change. This world is the world we made, and we can't escape it entirely. If we act quickly and decisively, we can slow the damage, and we owe that to all the world's grandchildren. Slide, please. Because here it is. What's best for our grandchildren is best for us. It's not the other way around. So if I do things like this, for my grandson Leon, 4 years old, there's nothing better I could do for myself. I think that's it. Slide, please. Oh, so here is the other bookend. This is a slide from the Apollo 8 that shows the Earth rising above the horizon of the moon. One of my favorite photos ever. It's called Earthrise. So I will leave it there.
Please join me in the chorus for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
Our Purpose in Poetry, or Earthrise, by Amanda Gorman. On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes our planet looked like an Earthrise. A blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, our first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality. A glimpse into our planet's mirror, and as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer. As we realize we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climatic changes. Some say will just go away, while some simply pray that they'll survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor, who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality, where despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marble, this little true marvel, to muster the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet.
You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give generations, the next generations, the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dot, we will fail you not. Just as we chose to go to the moon, we know it is never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. Together, we do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary, because every dawn we carry the weight of the fate of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of Earth rise. To see it, close your eyes. Visualize that all of us leaders in this room and outside of these walls or in the halls, all of us change makers are in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space. And we see the face of our planet anew. We relish the view. We witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes. Know that the future of this wise planet lies right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this Earth uprising. All of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising for an Earth more than worth fighting for.
So this morning, in lieu of our breakout rooms, we will have a talk back or Q&A for about 15 minutes with Dr. Becker. This is his 142nd climate change presentation. Get the mic to work. I'll come around with a microphone and intersperse questions fielded from home via the chat box. Please do wait to begin your question until you're handed the wireless mic. Those of us who follow the call that are exposed to mine, you want to gather around. Oh, thank you. Test, test. Okay. So I will come around with the mic for questions that you'd like to ask Gail.
And I'll speak into this one.
I just curious what you think about nuclear energy as part of the solution.
I think nuclear energy is probably something we need to hang on to for a while. Also, there are some other types of nuclear that are less potentially dangerous. Thorium fission is one. Ultimately, I think we'll want to get away from those, but in the short term, I think it beats the hell out of coal. Everything does.
I have a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old. My 18-year-old obviously will be able to vote in the next election, but I wanted to just say to everyone, that generation they're disappointed, they're angry. This is a problem not of their making, and they have zero power. They can't vote. You know, my 14-year-old can't drive, can't go anywhere, can't do anything. So what do you see? You teach at Western. What do you see for your college students, what they're doing, or any progress?
It's an issue called climate anxiety, and it's part of a bunch of other things, you know. And just as you expressed, you know, an increasing number of students having these conversations among themselves. I know because they've told me about feeling hopeless and feeling like they have been issued a rubber check, you know, and so on. What the students are doing is they're realizing they're going to have to solve problems themselves. They're not going to have to rely on us to do it for them. And it is, you know, it's a harsh realization for many of them, and they're getting organized. I spent a lot of time in classes asking students what kind of world they want, asking them and not because it's any of my business, but because I want them to think about that. And once they realize what kind of world they want, okay, well, then what are you going to have to do to get it? And having them thinking about that too. Because this is an issue of both head and heart. I could sit here and tell them all about the atmospheric physics and all that stuff, but that won't solve the problem. We have to deal with our hearts.
And Dr. Mitch, I'm a kind of nuts and bolts guy, and I understand concrete is one of the worst offenders related to climate change. Do you see anything coming down the pike that can, for those of us who are kind of addicted to that stuff, to change?
Well, I mean, concrete, as I understand it, I realize that I'm an ecologist and not an engineer. And so what I know of the engineering side of this is fairly superficial. But the cost of cement is in making the cement, which is then made into concrete. Hey, if any of the young people out there want to who want to save the world and make a ton of money, they should learn how to engineer a low carbon cement. And I mean, I honestly don't know what it is, but there are people working on that now. This is, by the way, the biggest thing in the world. I mean, climate change is not just, you know, a local concern. It is literally everything from now on. And so it's hard to keep track of it all.
I really enjoyed what you had to say today. When I was in high school back in the 50s, they talked about the greenhouse gas effect, and it scared the heck out of me. And I don't know what it is about the human person that we are not willing to give up things to make the world a better place. My particular thing is water bottles, but do you think that educating our age group is going to help at all?
Like our age?
Well, I'm 81, so you know,
I'm
you can figure
63,
anywhere from 45 up maybe. I see my kids who are in their 50s now, but I see them doing a lot of things that, reusing bottles or not using plastic bottles at all. I've just gotten on this kick where I'm using non-plastic things, but
that's good.
What can we do to educate ourselves or to be educated by someone like yourself for that moral imperative? We're leaving a crappy world to our kids. And what happened to us with the whole scare of greenhouse gases and whatever? Do you have a thought about that?
You have to realize that it wasn't accidental. You remember when tobacco was discovered, that it was harmful and addictive, and you remember how hard the tobacco industry fought against that particular idea, and you had all these big muckamuck suits from the tobacco industry, telling Congress one after the other that tobacco was not addictive. Well, that was a purposeful strategy, a PR strategy, and the fossil fuel companies have hired the same PR firms, and so the strategy is slow walking. They know that 80% of the fossil fuel reserves in the world has to stay underground. They know what would happen to their stock price if people came to understand that. And so they have they've thrown tons of money at buying politicians and buying media to slow walk it and slowly change from one media message to the other, seeming like they're coming around when they're really not. We have to make them do it. It means getting people elected who will stand up and say what's right, say what's true. In this case, true is also right. So it's not an easy thing. This is the hardest thing in the world because you're fighting against money and power.
Yeah.
Power and money. And I've got neither. So I have to do it with sincerity.
So from Marion DeFabio via the chat. Someone I know who has a graduate degree in environmental studies claims that recycling is a sham. I also noticed that recycling is not on your list of things we can do. In your experience, what's the real story on recycling? Thank you so much for your scholarship and your work.
Recycling is something we could do effectively, but we don't do it very effectively because we're not taking it seriously enough. Not we, the people who sort out our aluminum from our plastic and all that, but we, the companies who are actually taking it in. For a long time, we were recycling, and it would be all this stuff would be put on a barge and sent to China, and they would mine it for things that were useful to them and then throw away the rest. Now they don't want our trash anymore. And so I'm not sure exactly what the current status is of the trash that I separate out, but it seems like it's all going in the same bin when the truck picks it up. So another thing that young people could do if they're good at engineering is to fix recycling. There's money to be made. If one wants to make money, there is money to be made getting this right.
Just to echo what a lot of have said, thank you for coming and raising our awareness. I think you mentioned climate anxiety. It is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
My 8-year-old nephew, in his brilliance, said, I know what we could do to affect the rising sea levels. If everybody on Earth took a cup of water out of the ocean, then that would help. I mean, in his own way, trying to... but I appreciated what you said about what we all can do, because otherwise it's just free floating anxiety. I think, what's really within our control, and there's more. I think what you're saying is there's more than we think.
I mean, we took a permaculture course and we're creating a food forest in our backyard as an example to try to generate biodiversity even on our own land. But there's so much more that we each could be doing. And what you were speaking to regarding recycling, I painstakingly do it. And in an office complex, I saw they just throw it all in one thing. So, I mean, anything else, because otherwise it just becomes free floating anxiety because we feel like it's outside of our control and we can blame our generation and have the next generation blame us. But ultimately, I mean, we're all here and it feels like what is within my power to do something and, you know, and what isn't, you know.
Would you like to run for public office? Would you like to find people who have the right values, the values you share, and support them? That's one thing you could do.
Okay. Thanks.
And you know, it's not the other thing too is that that's humans have this issue is that we earnestly try to do something and we're not successful very rapidly. We say, what the hell, you know, but it's not all our fault because there are forces of money and power that are not acting in good faith, and we need to find ways to influence them. I asked the Westcon Foundation to divest of carbon. I asked them to look into divesting of carbon. Now, I don't know, it's when I was the faculty advisor or the faculty representative. I don't know how far they've gotten. I know that there are some members there who are interested, who would be willing to consider that. And that's really what I wanted them to do. So find something you can do and push on it, even if it's a small thing. And the thing is, once you get more confidence, you'll push harder and you'll figure out the effective way, the correct angle to push on it, and you'll get better at it. And then find other people who are pushy too, and, you know, do it that way.
Which leads us to the next question in the chat. Do you think there's any way to take the money out of elections so that politicians cannot be bought off?
Well, I mean, I am not a political science. I'm even less of a political science than I am an engineer. However, it seems like suggestions have been made of national funding of elections. And a lot of people don't like that because, of course, if everyone's getting the same amount of money, then the advantage is taken away from the people who have the best contacts.
Right. And then we just have a couple more minutes. What about cold fusion, asks Jim.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, fusion is a way of generating energy the way the sun does it. And that is taking small things and smushing them together. Okay, you generate lots of energy. The trick is, and again, I'm not an engineer, is controlling it, because you don't want to start a thermonuclear reaction. You know, you don't want it to be the morning after. Remember that movie? Or the day after? I show that to students too. You don't want Kansas City to blow up again. You want to do it in a controlled fashion. And also how to get the deuterium and tritium.
My question is about solar and wind power, and a little bit of a confusion about how damaging that would be on a small scale to birds. Because I read about the number of bird kills from both of those when we're talking about the large scale solar or wind power. But what about just for homes? Is that a problem as well?
Well, you probably wouldn't be able to put a windmill in your backyard in Connecticut. I think probably the zoning restrictions would keep you from doing that. You could put solar all over your house. But the bigger windmill issue, I mean, there is no perfect energy source. You know, every one that you can design has a few downsides. What we can do is we're really good at engineering. Not me, but other people are. And figure out how to engineer them to do the least damage. The worst wind rotor on the worst day is better than the best coal plant, I'm pretty sure. And so we should hold energy companies of all sorts to environmental standards. We should realize, however, that there will always be some problems that have to be fixed. That's as close to an answer as I can give you.
Oh, it's going to be the best question of all.
Good.
First of all, Professor, thank you for being here.
Happy to do
it. I'm going to come at the problem from a slightly different angle. I'm very concerned about the issue of young people and concerned about the people that are sitting in this room. The problems associated with what you're talking about this morning. The multiplicity of problems are incalculable. The damage to the earth, it just, we can't comprehend it. On the other side of it, there's some things we can do. There's a lot that we can't do. I was very sensitive to the issue about the 18-year-old. The problem that we have as a society is not being able to differentiate between what we can do and what we can't do, to be able to understand the difference. If I were in your shoes and I were talking to 18 to 20-year-old college students, I would try to help them at this point understand two things. There are things in this life that we can do. There's things in this life that we can't do, and we have to understand the difference. So when we get trapped in the emotional part of it, of the things that we can't do, the frustration that all the young people are feeling, and a lot of people are feeling in this room, is to understand the differentiation between the things I can't do anything about, and I have to understand that, and that affects my emotion. And that's a big, big problem. Mm-hmm. There's practical things, and you brought up some wonderful practical things in your talk this morning that people can do and need to do. But the differentiation between my ability to do things and my limitations that I can't do is has a terrible emotional impact on the society. Yeah. The society is very frustrated, but they're frustrated because the society at large does not understand the difference between I can put my efforts into things, I can be committed to things, but at the same time, I can remove myself emotionally. It's hard to do.
It is.
But there's technology there that helps people to do that. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to throw that out for what it's worth. People often say, you know, it is what it is. But people don't really understand that statement. They don't understand it all at its depth. Because if you truly understand it is what it is, you would be able to initiate your action, whatever it might be in this particular case, but at the same time be able to take a position that I have to watch my emotion. Now, young people don't understand that. They're not there yet. But to help them to separate that mm-hmm. could be a positive thing. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I've given that a great deal of thought, and that is correct. I would also say that you have to figure out you have to find a basis for offering hope, particularly to young folks. And you also have to realize that one individual can't do alone, many might be able to do, and perhaps will in the future have tools that we don't have right now. And so it is the most difficult thing. And scientists are not, generally speaking, unless you're a psychiatrist, not trained for dealing with these sorts of quandaries. And so I think it's one of the reasons why so few scientists actually engage in this. Scientists are very skittish about talking about things that relate to people's hopes and emotions, unless they're trained specifically for that. And I don't know anybody in my department who is. Yeah, so absolutely right. It's a big thing. It is what I think is one of the biggest things in the world, and it's going to require time and a lot of effort to fix it. Yep.
Actually, I just wanted to end on a kind of an up note. I'm usually Debbie Downer, but I know a small college in Minnesota that has windmills, and it has solar panels, and it has just converted all of its heating to whatever that is underground.
I know a small regional comprehensive state school here in Danbury who has a whole bunch of solar panels up on Westside campus.
Good.
You drive up the hill towards the campus and you'll see. I didn't even know they were there until I happened to see them. Boom, there they are. So
And I have 86 in my backyard.
I'm looking forward to putting them in my old beat up house probably after I put a new roof on it.
So on behalf of everyone here and at home, I want to thank you. This has been a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Dr. Wedge.